So I am searching out the weirder stories.
Right.
So do you know who Bud Hopkins is?
Yeah.
So I worked with Bud Hopkins. Bud Hopkins hypnotized me. And
Really?
Yeah. And
What was that like?
I'll tell you that in a second. So when talking with Bud Hopkins,
Tell for people who are listening, explain who Bud Hopkins is.
Bud Hopkins was a UFO abduction researcher. He used the term abduction. He was not shy about using the term abduction. He's a UFO abduction researcher who wrote a series of books between like the early 80s, and I think the last one was in 2011 or so it came out. He was an artist in New York City, and he took on the role of researching UFO abduction and talking to abductees and documenting their experiences in books. At the same time, everyone who worked with him will say he was a thoughtful, sensitive, caring person who was doing two things. He was researching a complicated subject that's beyond belief. At the same time, he was trying to offer solace to the people who have had these experiences. And he died in August 21st, 2011, which is going to be the 10-year anniversary in about a month now, a little over a month. And I know that date because my birthday is the next day, August 22nd. So talking to Bud, I said, do you notice synchronicities in this stuff, like weird stuff that surrounds these experiences? And he kind of goes, oh yeah. And he said, like, what do you make of that? And he said, well, like he kind of made this hand gesture. He said, like, this stuff, and he kind of made it like splashes everywhere. Like one event, like little stuff just goes everywhere. There's all this outlying stuff. And he said, it's my job as an author to try to rein that in. And give you my information that way. Mm. And I realized years later that like I'm the guy looking at those little drops that are like just barely connected to the overall phenomenon. I want to know about the synchronicities. I want to know about the owls. I want to know about the weird premonitions. I want to know about the psychic stuff. That, the core of it is the UFO contact experience. I want to know about all that outlying experiences. I want to explore that. And it's elusive. All I can do, I don't have any proof. I mean, a little bit. Maybe some two witnesses see the same thing. Maybe someone has a picture or a recording and things like that. So, but so that analogy of Bud Hopkins, who is a pioneering researcher, he wants to rein it all in. I want to study the stuff at the outline. And that's what these books are, is all the little speckles that surround the core phenomena.
So how did he hypnotize you? What was that? How did you get in touch with him? What made, did you want to get hypnotized, or was he more interested in hypnotizing you? What brought this about?
I used to live in New York City, so I used to go back and forth to New York City and visit folks a lot and stuff. So he was working in New York City. And at the time I was living there in New York City, I didn't have any interest in this at all. But I left New York City when I was about 30, and then I was living out west. And then when I was out west in Idaho is when I really started to dig into this research and dig into reading the books, and started to eventually dig into my own experiences and do my own research. But before I was doing my own research, I guess I had started. That was after the thing with Kristen, the events of seeing the multiple owls. Which isn't that interesting of a story, right? We saw some owls while camping, big deal. But it changed the direction of my life. So I sent him a letter. And he replied. And I visited his house. And he had, those laundry baskets you get at the dollar store? They're like big plastic laundry baskets. Yeah. He had that was just like these files. And they were all old, like these old like dividers. And one would say like, close-up sighting, one would say missing time, one would say lights in the sky, and there was just like letters and letters and letters, and I'm like, I looked at this big thing, I was like, is that from last year? He went, that's from last month. So I've talked to other UFO researchers, and I'll ask them like, what's the proof in this? How do you find the proof in this? And I had one lady kind of roll her eyes and go like, look at my email inbox. You want proof? That's the proof. Like how? Like I'm flooded. I'm like, and I'm nobody. Like I'm right. The owl research is way at the outer edge, and I'm getting stories all the time. I'm asking for them, and I'm getting them. But okay, your question was, what was it like getting hypnotized by Bud?
Yeah.
So I wrote him a letter. He got back to me, and I was going to be in New York, and I went and visited him. And it was a year later that I went back and visited him again, and he said, he was basically like, hear their stories about the beings in the yard and stuff like that. And he was like, I was considering hypnosis and I didn't want to do it.
So this was your first time being hypnotized?
Yeah. And not much happened. You know what did happen? So here, the story I told initially.
Did you go into like a...
No, it's very, I've been hypnotized. I've gone to, you know what I did? This is funny because this hypnosis in the field, like this is total inside baseball here, where you're on the outside and I'm trying to bring you up to speed on like,
right.
So like the infighting and the snipiness and the bickering and the anger and the butting heads within the UFO research community is like, it's crazy how antagonistic people can be towards each other. So within that field, like there are people who hate anything that has to do with hypnosis. By using hypnosis, you're introducing false data. You're doing
right because you can implant false memories, right?
Exactly. Right. You can make an argument that, and then on the other side, there's people who are like, oh, the only way to access the truth is through hypnosis, and so like I'm in the middle somewhere, which is a better place to be, I think, than to be like a true believer on either end of that spectrum, and so I'm super cautious. So,
well, all of the most famous abduction stories, all of the most famous abductees, like Travis Walton, Betty and Barney Hill, they all have been hypnotized, right? Yeah. But
Travis Walton, most of his recollection is conscious. In the books that I've written, most of the reports are like, I'll say 99% of the reports are done with. There's almost no hypnosis used in my books, a little bit, and they're my own hypnosis that I use in
but Travis has been through hypnosis since like multiple times to recount his stories. Yeah.
So and then if you read Bud's books, there's like this, it seems like 50% of the data emerges through hypnosis. And what I'm finding is I don't really, I don't trust hypnosis to that degree where I think it's where it's the truth emerging word for word. I think it's a mess. I think it gets complicated. And it's
for sure.
So, but the hypnotherapists will keep certain facts to themselves. Like I don't want to give away too much, but I mean, there's some things I know that I won't share, but simple things like how is the room lit? This is actually someone everyone knows. Like
what do you mean things that what kind of things?
Okay, so what does a doorknob look like on a flying saucer? Like what's the insignia on the suit? What's the
Is this the kind of stuff that you would remember after hypnosis?
Under hypnosis, you would say these things that would be consistent with other reports. An insignia on a suit. What's the doorknob look like on a flying saucer? If you're on board a craft. Word for word, the aliens will tell an abductee the same thing. Oftentimes, it's very similar to what they told the kids in Zimbabwe. I'm paraphrasing roughly, but your spirituality has far advanced. Your technology is far in advance of your spirituality, and you're in a dangerous place as humans on Earth. So, hypnosis is like, Bud was very ill at the time he hypnotized me. And I was on his bed, and there was a woman in the room videotaping it.
Really?
And I had a blanket on me. The videotape is not that interesting, right? So Bud's like sitting there talking very softly, and I'm like sitting, not moving at all, talking very softly. It's incredibly boring to watch. There's long, long, long pauses.
How does he get you into this state of hypnosis?
It's pretty, it's just a very simple set of commands, basically saying, relax, like simple things. Imagine you're going down the stairs. Every step you take, you're in a deeper state. And it doesn't feel that different. It feels like, like you're lying on a bed, you're relaxed, and then he'll ask you a question. You'll say stuff like, why did I say that? Like, where did that come from? I got some stories, but for Bud, the only thing that came up, everything that we covered was exactly the same from my normal memory. No
from your conscious memory.
From my conscious memory, yeah. No new information emerged except for a few little things. And one of them was the image of the 5 aliens in the yard. There was a palpable sense, and I talked about it. It was like, it wasn't just, oh yes, they're here. It was almost like, oh shit, they're back. It's them again. I had that thought under hypnosis. here's a question for you. Does that make it true that I've been abducted multiple times by these gray beings just because I had a thought that said, oh shit, they're back. It's them again. It's them. And I remember palpably feeling like, this is so familiar. This is so familiar seeing them out there. Does that make it true? I don't have an answer for that. I could see being vulnerable and wanting it to be true. And I could see being traumatized and saying, no, I reject that. I'm trying to stay somewhere in the middle.